The Blackwood mansion always looked most imposing at sunset. 3 stories of old money and older secrets, casting long shadows across manicured lawns that I had spent countless hours maintaining. For 3 years, I had walked through that service entrance, head down, playing the role they'd assigned me. But today, everything would change. My name is Olivia Morgan. At least, that's what my birth certificate says. But the truth about my name, like everything else in this story, wasn't quite what it seemed. I still remember my first day working at the mansion. August 15th, 2022. The humidity was suffocating, making my uniform stick to my skin as Mrs. Reynolds, the head housekeeper, gave me the tour. The Blackwoods expect perfection, she'd said, her steel gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Mr. James Blackwood built this fortune from nothing. Now his son Harrison runs the family's investment firm, and he's just as particular as his father. I'd nodded, memorizing every detail while hiding the real reason I'd taken this job. Yes, Mom, I understand. You'll start with the guest quarters. Work your way up to the main house if you prove yourself. What Mrs. Reynolds didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent months orchestrating this moment. The previous experience on my resume? Carefully crafted fiction. The glowing references. Paid actors with burner phones. Every detail planned to get me inside these walls. Because 3 years ago, I'd found a letter in my mother's belongings after she passed away. A letter that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. My dearest Elizabeth, if you're reading this, I'm gone. There's something you need to know about your daughter Olivia. She isn't just your child. She's a Blackwood. James is her father, though he never knew. I was young, working as his secretary before he married Margaret. When I told him I was pregnant, he paid me to disappear. I've enclosed his letters, the photos, everything. Olivia deserves to know her true heritage. More than that, she deserves her share of what's rightfully hers. Love, Mom. That letter sent me down a rabbit hole of research. James Blackwood, the family patriarch, had died 6 months before I found it. His son Harrison had taken over everything. The business, the estate, the family legacy. My supposed half-brother, living in luxury while Mom and I had scraped by. But James had left something else, a stipulation in his will that would change everything. The bulk of his $400 million estate would be divided among his biological descendants, following a mandatory DNA test at the 5-year mark after his death. Harrison and his children were so confident in their position, they barely paid attention to this detail. They should have. I worked my way up quickly, just as I'd planned. Within 6 months, I was assigned to the main house. Within a year, I was trusted with Harrison's private study, the same study where James had once seduced my mother. Girl. Harrison would snap his fingers when he wanted something, never bothering to learn my name. Coffee, black. I'd bring it silently, watching him work at the massive mahogany desk that had belonged to his father. My father. His resemblance to the photos I'd found was striking. Same sharp jaw, same cold blue eyes. Eyes I saw every morning in my mirror. His wife Victoria was worse. The help is getting sloppy. She'd complain over breakfast, loud enough for me to hear as I refilled water glasses. Really, Harrison? We should replace them all. Their children were cut from the same cloth. Thomas, the oldest at 25, who treated the staff like furniture. Emma, 23, who once accused me of stealing her jewelry, only to find it in her gym bag. And Michael, 19, who at least occasionally said, "Thank you." But it was Margaret, James's widow, who interested me most. She spent her days in the conservatory, tending to her orchids, occasionally studying me with an odd expression. "There's something familiar about you," she said one day as I watered her plants. "Have we met before?" "No, ma'am," I'd replied, careful to keep my face turned away. I just have one of those faces. I spent 3 years watching them, learning their routines, their secrets. I installed tiny cameras in the study, the dining room, anywhere they might discuss family business. Not illegal. The house security system gave them notice they were being recorded. They just never imagined the maid would have access to the footage. I learned that Harrison was embezzling from the company, that Victoria was having an affair with her tennis instructor, that Thomas had a gambling problem he was hiding from the family. Every secret, every indiscretion, carefully documented and saved. Not for blackmail. I didn't want their money. I wanted what was rightfully mine. My inheritance. My place in the family that had thrown my mother away. The 5-year mark was approaching. The DNA test requirement would soon be activated. But I needed more than just proof of my paternity. I needed leverage to ensure they couldn't bury the truth like they had before. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was cleaning Harrison's study when I found a letter from James's old lawyer, dated just before his death. "Harrison, your father made a deathbed confession. There may be another heir. A girl, born to a former secretary. He wouldn't give me details, but he was clear. If she exists, she's entitled to an equal share. The DNA requirement in the will isn't just a formality. Handle this carefully, Charles." Harrison had known there might be another heir, and chosen to hide it. The security camera caught his reaction when he discovered the letter missing, the rage, the fear, the frantic phone calls. That's when I knew it was time. Time to stop playing the invisible maid. Time to show them exactly who had been serving their coffee and cleaning their rooms for 3 years. I scheduled my revelation for the annual family meeting, where they gathered to discuss the estate. 5 years after James's death, when the DNA requirement would be triggered, when they'd be forced to face the truth they tried to bury. As I laid out the coffee service that morning, Harrison gave me his usual dismissive glance. "Use the back door when you're done. We have important family business to discuss." I smiled, touching the envelope in my pocket. "Of course, sir. I wouldn't want to intrude on family business." If only he knew just how important this family business would be. The morning of the family meeting dawned clear and cold. I arrived at the mansion an hour earlier than usual, my real clothes hidden under my maid's uniform, the envelope secure in my bag. Today's performance had to be perfect. The security cameras were my first priority. I'd spent months ensuring I had access to every feed, every angle. Today they would be my witnesses, recording every reaction, every word. Evidence that couldn't be denied or buried. Olivia. Mrs. Reynolds called as I entered through the service door. The families requested a full breakfast service in the main dining room. Get started on that right away. Yes, Mom. I headed to the kitchen, where I'd prepared everything the night before. Fresh pastries, fruit platters, coffee service, all arranged with meticulous care. Each cup, each plate, positioned for maximum impact when the moment came. As I worked, I could hear them arriving. Harrison's heavy footsteps in his study, Victoria's heels clicking on marble floors, Thomas shuffling in late, probably nursing a hangover from another night of secret gambling. Emma's voice, shrill with some new complaint. Michael's quiet presence, always in the background. Margaret arrived last, as always. She paused in the dining room doorway, watching me arrange flowers on the table. Those aren't the usual arrangements. No, ma'am, I said, adjusting a white lily. I thought today deserved something special. She studied me with that same puzzled look she'd worn for months. You remind me so much of someone. I just can't place who. If only she knew she was looking at a ghost from her husband's past. The family gathered slowly, taking their usual seats around the massive dining table. Harrison at the head, naturally. Victoria to his right, Margaret to his left. The children arranged by age down the sides, like a royal court holding audience. I moved silently among them, pouring coffee, offering pastries. Each time I approached Harrison, I noticed him shift slightly away, as if my mere presence might contaminate him. The DNA testing requirement activates today, Harrison announced, scanning some papers. Mere formality, of course. Charles has arranged for the testing to be done next week. Once that's complete, we can finally put this ridiculous clause behind us and proceed with distributing the estate properly. Victoria sipped her coffee. I still don't understand why James insisted on this. Questioning his own grandchildren's legitimacy. Father had become paranoid near the end, Harrison said carefully. I noticed his eyes dart to the letter in front of him, the one warning about another potential heir. Best to humor his wishes and be done with it. I glanced at the ornate clock on the wall. 9:45 a.m. Almost time. Girl, Harrison snapped his fingers at me. More coffee, then see yourself out. We have private matters to discuss. I lifted the coffee pot. Of course, sir. Though perhaps I should stay. This does concern me, after all. The room went silent. Harrison's head snapped up. Excuse me. I set the coffee pot down carefully. The DNA testing. I believe I mentioned in my employment paperwork that my legal name is Olivia Morgan. But that's not my whole name, is it, brother? Victoria's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Margaret's hand flew to her throat. Harrison's face turned an interesting shade of red. How dare you? He sputtered. Security. Remove this person immediately. I wouldn't, I said calmly, reaching into my bag. Not before you see what's in this envelope, and not before the security cameras record exactly how you handled this family matter. I pulled out my mother's letter first, smoothing it on the table. Perhaps we should start with this. A letter from my mother, Elizabeth Morgan, detailing her relationship with James Blackwood. The dates match perfectly with his business trips to Chicago in 1995. There are photos, too. Quite compelling ones. Margaret had gone pale, her hands trembling. Elizabeth, James's secretary. The one who disappeared suddenly. I smiled. Not disappeared. Paid to leave. To keep quiet about the baby she was carrying. Me. Harrison stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. This is absurd. A cheap attempt at extortion. Security. The cameras are recording, Harrison. I reminded him. Every word, every reaction. Just like they've been recording for 3 years. Your private conversations, your phone calls, including the ones about that letter you tried to hide. I produced a copy of the lawyer's letter next. The one warning you about another heir. About father's deathbed confession. You knew I might exist. Chose to hide it. The cameras caught your reaction when you realized it was missing from your study. Thomas was staring at his father. Dad, what's she talking about? Nothing, Harrison roared. This is ridiculous. You expect us to believe some maid is secretly a Blackwood. I reached for my top button, slowly undoing my uniform. Underneath, I wore a crisp business suit, the exact shade of blue Harrison favored. No, I expect the DNA test to prove it. That's why I spent 3 years gathering evidence, watching, waiting, making sure you couldn't bury the truth again. I turned to Margaret, who hadn't taken her eyes off my face. You said I reminded you of someone. Look closer. I have his eyes, don't I? James's eyes. The ones Harrison inherited too. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria looked like she might faint. Michael was staring at me with a mix of horror and fascination. Emma had her phone out, probably trying to text their lawyers. The DNA test is happening today, I continued. I've already arranged it with the estate lawyers. They're waiting in the East Parlor. And I've made sure every reputable lab in the state has copies of my evidence. No chance of accidents with the samples. Harrison's face had gone from red to white. You can't. Can't what? Claim my rightful inheritance? My place in this family? Strange how quick you are to deny it. Almost like you've known all along that father had another child. I pulled out my final piece of evidence, a recording from Harrison's study, dated just months after James's death. His voice, crystal clear. If that girl ever shows up, bury it. I don't care how. The estate is mine. All of it. The security cameras whirred softly, capturing every moment. Every shocked face, every guilty glance. Now then, I said, taking off my maid's uniform completely and draping it over a chair. Shall we discuss how this is going to work? As a family? The DNA test results would arrive in less than an hour. But looking at their faces, I knew they already believed. The truth they tried to hide had been serving them coffee for 3 years. Watching, waiting for this exact moment. And this was just the beginning. The hour waiting for the DNA results felt like an eternity. The Blackwood family sat in stunned silence in the drawing room, each lost in their own thoughts. The only sound was the gentle whir of security cameras, still faithfully recording every moment. Harrison paced by the window, phone pressed to his ear as he argued with the family lawyers. What do you mean you can't stop it? I don't care about the will's requirements. They can't stop it, I interrupted, sitting comfortably in James's old leather chair. I made sure of that. Every reputable lab has my DNA profile. Every piece of evidence is backed up in multiple locations. Even if you somehow corrupted today's test, I just demand another. Victoria dabbed her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. This is impossible. You can't expect us to believe that your perfect family has a secret. I smiled. Like Thomas's gambling debts? Or your tennis lessons that last 3 hours, but only bill for 1? Thomas choked on his drink. Victoria went pale. Oh yes. I know everything. I continued. 3 years is a long time to watch a family, to learn their secrets. The cameras catch so much, especially when no one thinks the maid is smart enough to access them. Margaret hadn't moved from her chair, her eyes fixed on my face. Elizabeth, she whispered. I remember her now. James was different after she left. Angry. Now I know why. A knock at the door made everyone jump. Charles Weber, the estate lawyer, entered holding an envelope. The results, he said gravely, as required by James Blackwood's will, tested against samples from all potential heirs. Harrison lunged for the envelope, but Charles held it away. As the independent executor, I'll read the results. The room held its breath as he opened the document. The DNA analysis confirms. Charles adjusted his glasses. Olivia Morgan is, with 99.9% certainty, the biological daughter of James Blackwood. The security cameras caught it all. Harrison collapsing into a chair, Victoria's muffled sob, Thomas and Emma exchanging panicked looks. Michael's quiet. I knew she looked familiar. But it was Margaret's reaction that surprised me. She stood slowly, walked across the room, and took my hands in hers. "You have his eyes," she said softly. "I should have seen it sooner. Should have questioned why he changed his will, insisted on the DNA tests. He knew. At the end, he knew about you. The will's terms are clear," Charles continued. "The estate is to be divided equally among all biological descendants of James Blackwood. Given these results, that means a four-way split between Harrison, Olivia, and Harrison's two biological children. 2. Victoria's voice cracked. "But we have 3. Michael's DNA," Charles paused delicately, "shows no biological relationship to the Blackwood line." Victoria's face crumpled. Michael stood up, oddly calm. "I've known for years, Mother. Found my original birth certificate when I was 16. Another secret exposed. The cameras recorded Victoria's tears, Harrison's shocked stare, the way the perfect family facade cracked completely. "Well," I said into the silence, "shall we discuss the new arrangement? I have some suggestions about the company's future, particularly regarding those irregular transfers you've been making, Harrison." He slumped in defeat. "What do you want?" "Everything I'm entitled to. My share of the estate. A seat on the board. Public acknowledgement of my identity." I leaned forward. "But most importantly, I want you to understand what it feels like to be powerless, to be treated as less than human, to be told to use the back door." Standing, I smoothed my suit, the one I'd chosen to match Harrison's. "The cameras have recorded everything. Your reactions prove you knew about me, tried to hide my existence. That's inheritance fraud. Not to mention the evidence of embezzlement, tax evasion, and various other creative accounting practices I've documented." I turned to Charles. "The estate's forensic accountants should review everything from the past 5 years. Every transaction, every transfer. I'm sure they'll find it enlightening." Harrison broke. "You'll destroy this family." "No, you did that. By treating people like they were beneath you. By thinking your position made you untouchable." I gestured around the room. "Look how well that worked out. Over the next few hours, agreements were drawn up. Legal documents signed. My identity as Olivia Blackwood officially acknowledged. The estate would be divided as specified in the will, the company placed under independent audit. New board members appointed to oversee operations. Margaret insisted I move into the east wing of the mansion. Your birthright, she called it. Michael, freed from pretending to be a Blackwood, accepted a position managing one of the charitable foundations. Thomas and Emma had to adjust to their reduced inheritance, but the family's wealth was still substantial enough to maintain their lifestyle, minus the gambling and secret affairs. Harrison fought every change, of course. But with the evidence I'd gathered, he had no choice but to accept the new reality. 1 month later, I sat in James's old study, my study now, looking through a photo album Margaret had found. Pictures of my father in his younger days, including several with my mother. They looked happy in love, until family expectations and social status tore them apart. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Margaret entered, carrying a small box. I found these in James's personal safe, she said. Letters from your mother. He kept them all. And this. She handed me an envelope, yellow with age. A letter he wrote to you, never sent. With trembling hands, I opened it. My dearest daughter, by the time you read this, if you ever do, I'll be gone. I was a coward, choosing family reputation over love, over you. The DNA requirement in my will is my attempt at making things right. A chance for you to claim your place in this family, if you're half as clever as your mother. I hope someday you'll understand, even if you can't forgive. Your father, James. A tear splashed onto the paper. Not sad, exactly. Not happy either. Just understanding. The staff entrance has been renovated, Margaret said quietly. No more back door. Everyone uses the main entrance now. I smiled. Good, though I think I've proven the most important lesson already. Oh, it's not which door you use to enter. It's what you do once you're inside. The security cameras kept recording, witnessing this new chapter in the Blackwood family history. A history that now included all of its members, even the ones who'd once been told to use the back door. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying a family. Sometimes it's about forcing them to become better than they were, to acknowledge their mistakes, face their secrets, and maybe, just maybe, learn to be the kind of family they should have been all along. As for me, I had claimed my birthright, exposed the truth, and changed the power dynamics forever. But sitting in that study, holding my father's letter, I realized something important. The real victory wasn't in the money or the status. It was in finally belonging. Not as the maid who served coffee, but as Olivia Blackwood, the daughter who came back to claim her place, and in doing so, forced an entire family to confront their own reflection. The cameras could stop recording now. This story's ending had already been written, not in DNA tests or legal documents, but in the simple truth that sometimes justice comes dressed in a maid's uniform, serving coffee and waiting for exactly the right moment to pour out something much stronger than revenge.